There have been several tank duels since I last made a video about them, some 3 months ago. So I decided to take a look at those that have happened since and analyze them to see if those are actual tank duels or just propaganda. First video we will look at is claimed to be a Russian T-72 tank taking out a Ukrainian tank. But we can't actually see the supposed tank that gets destroyed. The only source of the information that it is actually a Ukrainian tank getting destroyed is from the narrator of the video, where he states that the Russian crew successfully engaged and destroyed a Ukrainian tank in a tank duel. Well, there certainly is something smoking on that spot, but we can't actually see what it is. From all we know, it could have been a Humvee or some infantry fighting vehicle. We don't know, since we can't see. After the destruction of whatever was there, the Russian tank deploys smoke and moves away from that position. Now, was this an actual tank duel? As I said, we can't see what is actually getting engaged, and since we don't see the supposed tank firing back at the Russians, it is hard to say if it actually was a tank. I personally doubt it, but it is possible. Well, the likelihood of it being a tank is the same as it being anything else, unless you want to trust the narrator. Next video is directly from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, where they claim a tank duel took place in the Luhansk region, where a Ukrainian T-64 defeated a Russian T-72. You might think that we can't see that it is a tank here either, but you would be wrong. We actually got to see the destroyed tank up close in a video posted by Ukrainian infantry, where they take cover behind it from artillery. And we can see that it is actually a T-90A tank. We can see it is the same tank based on the fact that there is a crossroad behind the tank in both videos. There are dried/destroyed trees to its right and destroyed buildings to its left. The tank was also shot 2 times and we have evidence for that too, which I will get to in a second. Now, did a duel take place here? I don't believe it did. There are several reasons for that. First reason being that the Ukrainian tanks don't come under any fire for the entire period of them moving down the road and getting into the position to fire on the T-90A, which makes me believe this is yet another of those videos where the tank just destroys an already abandoned tank from the enemy. Also, the tank's turret is in the perfect position for the driver to bail out. For those who don't know, the turret of the Russian tanks needs to be turned slightly to the right for the driver to effortlessly get out. He can still get out if it wasn't, but he would need to squeeze through a bit. The next reason is that the tank was already detracked, which can be seen in the second video. You might say that the tank was detracked by one of the shots from the T-64, but that is the next thing I want to get to. We actually see 2 hits from the T-64, the 2 that were fired in the video. Both hit the front of the turret. Now you might be wondering, how can a T-64 penetrate the frontal turret armor of the T-90A, which is a much more modern tank? Well, I believe the shot that penetrated the tank was the bottom one, and I will explain why. You see, the T-90A, just like any modern tank, has composite armor in the turret. The composite armor in question is most likely a form of reflective plates, which is a type of armor used on T-72B tanks. Now, looking at some of the diagrams of the welded turret, like one of the T-90A, we can see that the composite armor area goes up from the sloped turret roof and stops flat on the lower edge where the slope that leads to the turret ring starts, which is this line here. This shot hit just beneath that area and probably completely ignored the composite armor. Or because the tank uses reflective plates, it is possible the penetrating hit went somewhat between the gaps of the composite, since the tank was hit from an angle, which can be seen on the wreck. That is probably because the turret was slightly rotated to the right and the T-64 that took the shot was also on the T-90's left side down the road. Another problem here is that T-90A has a horrible design where the Shtora dazzlers are mounted directly onto the armor of the turret, preventing the Contact 5 ERA from being mounted there. And if we look at the pictures of T-90A tanks, we can see that the area that was hit is not covered in any explosive reactive armor, which drastically decreases the protection. This is also confirmed by the fact that the dazzler that flew off has a big hole on it. This is probably the bottom area of the dazzler. It just got flipped while flying through the air, and then landed upside down on the tank. Now, what kind of projectile did the T-64 use? I don't really know. It is possible that the APF-SDS was used, since when the second shot hits the tank, we can see a huge ball of sparks flying off. which is typical for APF-SDF hits. Now, since we can see both hits from the T-64 and the T-90A's turret, it is safe to assume that the tank was detracked previously. And I doubt that happened when the tank got destroyed, since the only parts missing are around the area where the tank got shot and where the fire from the cook-off was coming out, like the blown-off hatch. But the tracks on the other side are intact, as are the wheels. That is because no catastrophic explosion took place. Instead of exploding, the ammo cooked off. So yeah, I sincerely doubt this one was a duel too. It is still interesting to see the flaws of the T-90A's design. The last video shows a Russian T-72B3 tank engaging a Ukrainian column. The original post claims the tank is alone, but we can see that the column is taking fire from artillery, so at least in that sense, the tank is not alone. But we don't see any other Russian tank in the near vicinity. The reason why I decided to include this video is because the Ukrainian column does contain tanks, which appear to be T-72 tanks, but I'm not certain. Anyway, the armored column seems to be doing a U-turn on the road, and possibly preparing to move away in a different direction. Once one of the APCs, which appears to be YPR-765, based on the shape of the side armor and the turret, takes a turn and comes out of the foliage, it takes a hit from the tank and gets knocked out. Then a BMP in the column takes a hit. Then another YPR-765 comes to the same position where the first one completely stops, probably wanting to help the crew evacuate. But then it also takes a hit and gets knocked out as well. The one behind it starts turning and appears to take a hit right at the top edge on the back, which means that the hit probably did nothing, which is also evident by the fact that the vehicle is still completely operational. Then we can see a BMP-2 in front turn its turret to the right and start firing the autocannon, which is evident by the blasts coming from the muzzle. Then the Russian drone pans to the right to reveal that the BMP-2 was actually firing in the direction of other Ukrainian vehicles. Luckily, it seems they have realized that quickly and stopped firing, and also seem to have not hit anyone. While all of this is happening, one Ukrainian tank is just sitting there, and the weirdest thing is that the T-72B3 doesn't even attempt to engage it, nor does the Ukrainian crew attempt to turn around the tank until much later in the video. This is pretty much where the firing of the Russian tank stops. Later in the video, we can see the Ukrainians moving into the Russian position, with tanks, infantry fighting vehicles and infantry. And it appears as if one of the Ukrainian tanks fired on the T-72B3, since near the end we can see the smoke rise in front of it, which could either be a shot that fell short, or the T-72B3 fired prior to that. But I would go with the latter, since there is no visible damage to the ground in front. But the T-72B3 then starts reversing, slowly of course, and the video ends. According to the Russian source, this took place in the autumn, and the tank is from the 76th VDV battalion. And according to the same source, the crew of the tank survived the engagement, which could suggest that they possibly retreated. Depends if you want to believe that or not. Nevertheless, it is very strange to me that the Russian crew completely ignored the tanks and prioritized the APCs out of all things. Of course, it is easy to judge everything from the bird's eye view. Maybe from the point of view of each side, they couldn't easily see each other. The fact that the T-72B3 engaged the BMP-2 in that column, and then the APC, which came practically to the same point from where the BMP-2 was visible, could suggest that something was obscuring the view, and made the rest of the column hard to see. And the fact that the Ukrainians are also not engaging the tank for pretty much the entirety of the video could also suggest that their view is also obscured by something and they can't really see it. Oh, and there is also this one video where some call it a tank duel, and I believe it is pretty obvious that this is just a tank destroying another abandoned tank. I mean, the guy recording the video is pretty much in the open. You wouldn't be doing that if you knew there was a fully operational tank sitting not too far from you. Anyway, that will be all. If you like my content, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a nice day.